That's right.
This reminds me of another topic I wanted to ask you about, which is psychedelic experiences, which have become very widely discussed recently for different reasons. Now, when people have a high dose psychedelic experience on something like psilocybin or DMT, they say a number of things that are very interesting, and I'm wondering if you can comment on these for us. One, they might say things almost like what you were just describing, like, well, I saw colors that I didn't even know were colors. I perceived things that not only I hadn't perceived before, but that I didn't know were even available kinds of things to be perceived. They'll say things like, well, it's also very hard to talk about, right? They'll say things like, I can't describe it, I can't put it in words. It seems to be very hard to encode in memory. It sort of slips away very quickly based on the perceptual weirdness of the experience. And finally, the other thing that I think they say that's interesting to get your take on is they'll say things like, there was a sense that things were more real than real. And so in the context of your ideas around perceptions not reflecting reality, when we think about something like a high dose psychedelic experience where people have these completely sort of new and alien perceptual experiences, how would you as a cognitive scientist think about what's actually going on there to create those experiences?
Well, first I'll say what my physicalist colleagues would say.
Okay.
Right? So if I'm a hard-nosed physicalist and I'm a neurobiological reductionist, so I'm saying that the brain is fundamental reality and it's only brain activity that causes my experiences, then these people that are on psychedelic drugs and getting these different kinds of experiences, they're not perceiving any new fundamental nature of reality. Their brains are just being addled. But there's just nothing more to say about it. That, I mean, in terms of depth of reality, you might get personal insights out of it, emotional insights, and so forth. But the visual objects that you're seeing and the new colors you're seeing are not insights into a new, deeper reality. Your brain is just being fooled with. Now, in the framework that I'm working on, in which space-time is doomed, physical objects in space-time are not fundamental, and therefore, in fact, they only exist when they're perceived, right? So I'm saying, I don't have a brain right now. If you looked inside my skull, you would see a brain because you're creating the brain. Just like if in the VR with the tennis ball, there is no tennis ball until I look. When I look, there's a tennis ball. It exists in the act of looking. As soon as I turn away, that tennis ball is gone. It's nowhere. There is a reality, but it's not a tennis ball, right? That's the supercomputer. So so I want to be very clear about what I'm saying. I have no brain right now. There are no neurons in me. If you looked at me, I would absolutely predict that you would see neurons. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean the neurons are there when you don't look. That just means, like the tennis ball, I create the tennis ball when I need it. I delete it when I don't. When you look inside brains, inside heads, you create the brains. That's the way we create what we're seeing. Just like we create the VR tennis ball, we create neurons, we create that whole story. And as soon as we look away, that is gone. Our story, there's some deeper reality, and we have to recognize we just got this little tiny projection of a little tiny story, and we mistake it for the reality. It's a rookie, freshman, sophomore mistake. Right, we have to get over that. That's why I'm saying this is the biggest obstacle to the advancement of science now, is this physicalist sophomoric mistake. Our perceptions are just our perceptions. They're not an insight into reality. Once we get used to that, we can make the next step beyond. So I guess I'll stop on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, how would you start to think about, so when someone has a high dose psychedelic experience, say they based on their reports, it would appear that they encounter qualia, that they have percepts that they've never encountered before, and that are potentially like your tetrachromatic female example, that some women have this extra dimension of color perception, that people claim that there's these other dimensions of perception, whether it's colors or shapes or topologies or whatever, that simply never entered into their conscious awareness prior to having that experience. So how would you think about what those percepts actually are and what they're reflecting?
Well, yeah. So my colleagues, as I said, have one answer, and it's fixed. There's nothing beyond space-time. So if they think they're seeing dimensions beyond space-time, they're wrong. But in this other framework that I'm talking about, in which space-time is doomed, and in which I'm proposing a theory in which conscious agents are fundamental, and there's an infinite variety of experiences that are far beyond anything we've experienced. it opens the possibility that the experiences that people have on drugs could be new portals into this realm of conscious agents and new portals into new kinds of experiences. It doesn't entail that that's the case. It allows that that's the case. So what we have to do as responsible scientists is to develop this theory of conscious agents and its projection into what we call our brain and the nervous system. We have to see how the default mode network and area V4 and all these different structures of the brain and their activity are a projection of this deeper dynamics of conscious agents. We then have to model what 5-MeO-DMT is doing to neurotransmitter systems in the nervous system of the brain, do a pullback from that into this theory of conscious agents to say what we think that corresponds to in the theory of conscious agents. And then we can try in that context to say that is possibly a real new insight into a new dimension of conscious agents that we never had before. Or no, that was really just like the drug did a hardware error and you got a bug from it, right? So we don't know which is, but at least the theory of conscious agents leaves open the possibility that drug experiences in some cases could be insights. It also leaves open the possibility that they're just errors, they're causing malfunctions and so forth. So we'll see. Whereas the physicalist framework, there is nothing beyond space-time. And so there's no insights that you could be having that go beyond normal space-time.
So, when we use some of these philosophical terms like physicalism or idealism and things like this, or naturalism or other things, how would you, so if your way of thinking about things is not physicalist, but most scientists would be considered physicalist, and a presumption that many people would make, or a concern they might have is, well, if Donald is not a physicalist, there must be some kind of airy-fairy or quasi-religious metaphysics that's being smuggled into this. Is that accurate, or is it fair to say that your viewpoint is completely naturalistic, even though it's not physicalist?
Yeah, I view this as completely naturalistic. I'm just saying our best theories tell us that space-time is doomed. As a scientist, I have to accept what my best theories tell me and try to come up with a deeper theory. I have to come up with it's in the best interests of science as a natural scientist to say, okay, space-time isn't fundamental. I was wrong. I thought it was fundamental. I thought that electrons and protons and quarks and gluons were fundamental. They're not. Okay, well, I can cry over it for a few weeks, and now I'm over it. Now let's go on and find out what's a deeper theory. And it's going to still be the normal science in the sense that whatever I propose out there, it better project back into space and time and give me back the scientific theories that we know and love, and better give me back, empirically verifiable experiments to test my theories. So it's entirely naturalistic in the sense that for every entity that I propose, I'm going to be proposing it mathematical dynamics and proposing experiments that we can go to test it. And also, even before we get there, showing how I can get all of our current scientific theories as a projection of this deeper theory, right? So I'll just give you just one hint about the kind of thing that we'll have to do. So time, right? Our universe, our physical space-time universe, seems to have a very finite time. It started 13.8 billion years ago in the Big Bang. And there's this entropic time. Entropy keeps increasing and time increases, and it seems like they're very intimately linked, that in some sense our time is a measure of entropy in some sense. And in this theory of conscious agents, now we have a mathematical model in which you have, I haven't gone into the mathematical model at all, but I'll just say that we have these spaces of possible experiences. So the probability spaces of possible experiences, and agents can have experiences and then can affect the experiences of other agents. As it's, I don't know if I want to go all the way there, so I'm halting here. But maybe I'll want to just say that we can then take that and we can have a notion of a dynamics in this. So I'll just say briefly, a dynamics of conscious agents but it need not have an increasing entropy. We can have, for example, something called a Markovian dynamics that's stationary. So we can have this dynamical system of conscious agents. It's a big dynamics, really complicated, but it's stationary. So the entropy does not increase with the time parameter, the step parameter of that dynamics. But it's easy to show, trivial proof, that if you have this Markovian dynamics that has no entropic time, if you take any projection of it, like by conditional probability, so you look at it from a perspective, any projection from a particular perspective, you will induce entropy, increasing entropy.
I see. So what you're saying
so you get time.
I see. So what you're saying is, if I'm understanding correctly, there are certain dynamical systems that one can construct with properties such that there's no entropy, there's no disorder,
no increasing entropy, no increasing
entropy over time, like what we see in the physical universe that we're perceiving right now. But if you take any lower dimensional slice of that, if you look at a shadow of that system, it will, in all cases, give you just that.
It'll give you, all of a sudden now the entropy is increasing with your, and so you get this entropic time. So who knows? In this realm of conscious agents, there may not be any entropic time, and so, but like time is one of our most important limiting resources right now, right? Time is one of the most valuable resources that we have. We compete because of time limits. So this world of the conscious agents, the whole notion of competition may not be there because the resource of time isn't a problem. So, but when we look at the dynamics and project it into space-time, all of a sudden we're going to get this artificial time, this entropic time as an artifact of the projection. And so maybe evolution by natural selection will be the artifact way of looking at our dynamics, that you and I appear to be competing for finite resources, and that's just a limited projection perspective of a deeper dynamics in which it's not true that we're competing for resources and there is no entropic time. So as much as I've touted the glories of evolutionary psychology and evolution by natural selection, it may be that whole theory is really revealed as an artifact of the projection of a deeper dynamics in which there is no competition. We're not competing for resources and the whole bit. We'll see.